Hey there lovely people, Jonathan Matt Mendes, Painted Love, and welcome to my channel. Today's project is all about restructuring a piece of furniture by applying some Woodubend mouldings to a rather boxy flat piece of furniture to completely re-realise its actual shape and design. So I haven't got a clue on which paint that I'll be using or what colours that I will go for, but once I've got the mouldings on, I maybe will have a little bit more of an idea. It's going to be one of those tutorials where you just follow me along as I create. By now, you will have all seen the end result, so I'm hoping it's good. So let's take a closer look at the piece of furniture. At this stage, I like to take you through some of my ideas for this piece. But first up, I do want to address the fact that I know this piece of furniture looks really good on camera, and I want to reassure anybody that loves wooden furniture that this is not an antique. Here in the UK, we get lots of this style of furniture. I picked this up for just £30 and probably paid a little too much for it. I'm going to show you underneath so you can see what it's made of. It's just veneer on particle board, and I think the door fronts are definitely made of a laminated timber, and it just has a really good veneer and finish to the surface, and one or two big scratches in this piece, so it's not worth restoring because the time you sand this away, most of the veneer is gone, so you're down to particle board. So for me, this is a good piece of furniture to paint. So be reassured, no antiques were hurt in the making of this video. So back to the Woodubend mouldings. So I've pulled out one or two mouldings that I think will be really good for this piece. And first up, I thought it would be really nice to add a corbel up here in this dead space, but I didn't have one that would fit perfectly in there. So I've pulled out a larger one, which is 6022, which looks a little like that. It's quite a chunky one, but it doesn't quite fit in that space. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to cut out a lot of material in a V shape from the back to see if I can bend it round the corner, and that should really create a really lovely kind of hourglass shape on the piece of furniture to balance out with the bottom of the chunky plinth. So the other thing that I'm going to do, these lines which you see, which I think they're actually painted on, I'm going to use them as a guide for a trim. I'm not going to do the half moon corners, I'm going to do them quite square. So I pulled out R722, and this is kind of like a laurel leaf. It's quite a small design, and I'm going to add a square panel in each cupboard door. And then one of my favourites, and you may have seen me use this before, it's double-sided, so there's two sides to this and you join them together, so they should look just like that. And this one is 1414, come on John, eyesight, 1457. So this creates like a laurel leaf wreath with a bow in the centre. So I thought that might look really lovely inside the panel on both sides. I have pulled out one or two other things like this. This is like a little corbel or a design. It may go on the bottom, I'm not sure. There's some extra bows that I've got, so they could go on the bottom. We'll just see how it looks once we get the larger elements on the piece. The other thing that I've decided to do with this piece, I'm going to go with a mix of styles. So a little bit of my favourite Gustavian style furniture, which is going to be the theme for running across the top. And I mean, this is a Georgian style, so a little bit Georgian, a little bit kind of French inspired, a mixture of everything. So hopefully it will look really nice. So the drawers, I'm going not to have a heavy detail. I'm going to use this really super plain trim, which is about 16 millimeters wide by 2.5 millimeters thick. And I'm going to add a stripe in the drawer fronts and maybe around the side. I'm just going to see how it goes, just to create this sort of stripy effect along the top and keep it really plain at the top before the design hits out on the bottom. In theory, it's all going to work out really well, I hope. So it's going to be a rather long video. I will speed up some of the applying the mouldings. It's probably going to take me all day to apply all of these mouldings. I will show you how to apply a moulding some point throughout the video, but sit back and enjoy the application of the Woodubend mouldings. So I promised you a project of Woodubend mouldings, and I'm just going to stop here at the moment to take you through my plans for the overall piece. One thing that I would say is you could stop right here, and ordinarily I would stop at this stage and go in for some really lovely paint effects, maybe a different colour in the centre panels and a darker colour on the outside edges, and do a lot of distressing, which I'm going to do anyway. You know that I'm going to do that. But I've decided that I'm going to continue with adding more of the trim on the side panel. So I want to replicate what you see here on the front, on the side, as well as all of this rib detail that I've created with the flat trim on the upper section, so it wraps around the whole piece. The only problem is the drawers have a thin trim that is part of the piece of furniture where the flat panels sit inside, so I've got to recreate that. And how I'm going to do that is with one of my own trims that I designed with Solid Joe for Woodubend. This is TR801. TR801. It looks like that. I have used one half. It comes both sided, so there's plenty in there. It looks a little bit like this. It's just a half round. It's 6mm wide, and it's just got a lovely curve to it, which is exactly the same profile as this, because I designed it to be, because I use a lot of this kind of furniture in the UK, and it is just the perfect trim to go around the edges of cupboards or drawers. So it's a really useful trim. So I'm going to use this trim to create the rectangle on the upper section, and then I can go in with all of the flat trim inside to continue all of that rib detail around the side. Of course, this is not going to have any sort of other colours on it. It's going to be one flat colour, I think, maybe a bit distressed, a bit of dark wax here and there, to kind of bed that in. And I'm still going to add a bit more detail at the bottom, so it's going to be more about the detail at the bottom. And I had decided to go with the laurel kind of ring, and it has a bow in the centre of the laurel wreath. We'll call it a laurel wreath, and it feels a little bit too bulky for me, so I've come up with an idea to kind of make it a little bit smaller, slim it down and make it more delicate. So I've decided on each side there is a bow which connects, the two connect together. I'm going to lose the bow and maybe the bottom two leaves as well. I'm going to cut them out to the stalk and make this a little bit tighter. I will be able to bend them round a little bit more, but make them a little tighter in the centre. And then I thought I would also go back in for my 6mm half round and shave it down, sand it down to the same sort of profile as the stalk, which goes through the middle of the leaves, and kind of wrap it over one another. So it'll look a little bit like a stalk coming one way and the other way, so it crosses over at the bottom, and it should be a little bit more delicate and my own design, really. So that's the plan. Please stick with me. I know it's a talky video, and it's also a long video when it comes to the Woodubend mouldings. I promise you we will do a gorgeous paint finish on here. We're going to age it, distress it, make it look absolutely beautiful. So onward and upward, let's get some more Woodubend mouldings on this piece. So that was a mammoth task, applying all of the trims and mouldings to the surface of this piece of furniture. There are a couple of things that I want to do before we move on to the painted part of this tutorial. One is to add one more trim. This is the 6mm half round. This is the one from my collection. And I'm going to run it just underneath the top edge and around the corbels, over the top and around, to make a really lovely, neat connection from top to bottom. And the other thing that I need to do is fill just underneath each one of these flat trims to make sure that there's no gaps and it looks all very seamless, and maybe a little bit of fill around the corbel because that was quite tricky to apply. And then we can look at the paint. I haven't decided which colours that I'm going to go for on this project. I do want it to be time worn and distressed. So maybe we'll use a little bit of salt wash underneath with some paint and then see how that looks and build up some colours over the top. Okay, it's now time for the painterly part of this project. So as you can see, I've restructured the whole piece. It's completely different and I'm really happy with the way it's looking. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with a cheap oil-based spray paint to cover the trims and mouldings on this piece. The drawer fronts with the reeded detail, I'm going to go in with a brown spray paint, something that kind of resembles the wood. The reason for that is I'm not going to be adding any other highlighted details to that trim. The other trims, I am going to add a touch of gold, I think, a little later on. So I've decided to go in with a bronze metallic spray paint to cover all of those trims. Beyond that, I still haven't chose a colour. I was thinking pink, but there's a little part of me that says go white, which I haven't done a project with white for a long time. So I'm thinking it may be white. So after the spray paint has completely dried, I'm going to go in with a mix of Sloan chalk paint and salt wash to add a little bit of texture to the edges of all of these panels. Once that's all dried, I'm going to add another colour, something that's a little bit like French linen, almost like a brown. I've got a big container of lots of paint colours that I've put in, Sloan paint colours that I've put into one container, and it's made like a dark French linen. So I'm going to use that up by making this sort of woody colour underneath. I think a woody colour, a pale woody colour would be really lovely with a softer colour over the top to distress back. It'll all make sense as it happens. Just keep on watching. Now time to add a little texture to the piece. I want there to be little dark chippets that break through the overall finish. So I've decided to use Sloan graphite, and I'm adding some texturizing medium, which is salt wash. If you've not seen salt wash before, it's a great additive which thickens up the paint. So I can add a little bit of texture here and there, and when I distress back, I can peel back to the undercolours, in this case graphite. So I've popped a little bit of graphite into an old food container, and then I'm going to use a couple of scoops. I want this to be really thick, or a scoop and a half probably, of this salt wash into the little cup. And I'm going to mix those two together to make a really thick sort of paste. A little bit more paint. Maybe one scoop was enough. I think it probably was, John. You can always add water as well. So you can pop a little bit of water in. If you go too thick, it doesn't alter the colour in the paint. Have I got a water spray? Yeah. So you could take a little bit of water and loosen it back up till you've got a really lovely thick paste to work with. I'll show you how this looks. So you can see, if you know Annie's paint, that's how thick it goes. So the colour is all the way through that salt wash. You shouldn't see any white powder, even though that would be quite nice if you have a little white flecks as well. You could do two passes. You could do a dark one and a light one. But for this project, I'm just going to add a touch of dark here and there. So I'm going to hit the corners of things where I want a little bit of texture into the project. So my salt wash graphite mix has dried, lots of lovely little chippy bits that are going to be revealed later on in the process. So the next step is to apply an even coat with a brush any what way over all of this. And this is the colour that I've got. It is an Annie Sloan colour mix. It's lots of different colours that I've had left over into one container. And it's kind of like French linen, a little bit grey, but close to French linen. And I think that's kind of like old wood. It's going to feel a little bit like old wood underneath the other layers of colour. Notice that I haven't painted the top. I'm going to reserve the top for a marble finish, I think. So I'm going to work on the lower half. It's getting rather late now. It's getting dark outside. So I want to get this coat of paint on so it all has a good amount of drying time overnight, ready to do the next steps on this project. It's now day 2 of this project. All of my paint has dried overnight. It's nice and hard. I am going to go in with another couple of products at this stage, which are going to sit somewhere underneath. It's part of the distressing technique, I suppose. I've decided to go in with Posh Chalk's patina. This is Byzantine gold. Patina is a wax, so I'm hoping that the wax will resist some of the paint. I don't want this piece to be really blingy and gold. I just want there to be a touch of gold here and there on the moulding details. So I'm going to paint the whole surface with the gilding wax on all of the detailed work. So fingers crossed we will get a slight resist when we put the final coat over the top. The other thing that I've decided to use is Crackle Gel. So this is another Posh Chalk product, and I'm going to hit it here and there in certain areas just so that we get some crackle, or in theory we'll get some crackle. Annie's paint is quite heavy, so we might not get really big crackles, but we will get some sort of aging and distressing. We'll see anyhow. So this is the Crackle Gel. Unfortunately, there's no label on this. I was sent this a long while before Solly Joe actually released it to trial it. So today's the trial. Sorry, Solly Joe, I didn't get a chance to trial it out, but we're going to see on this piece how well it does with chalk paint. So on with the patina, we're going to use a small art brush, and I'm just going to paint in. It's like a waxy consistency, and I'm just going to paint all of the details. I'm not going to do it really perfectly, but just a lot of the high ground, I suppose, because we're going to push paint back into these mouldings later on when we go in with the final top colour. Before I proceed on with the Crackle Gel and the next layers of paint, I just want to take a little bit of your time to talk about the various different stages in this project. So as you've seen this progress, there have been many stages where it looks almost as if it could be done. Even at this stage, a little bit of wax and a little bit of distressing and you could call it done and it would look great. The idea of what I'm doing is that I really want to really age this, so there's lots and lots of different layers. I know it looks really great. It's not my kind of style to have this much bling on show. It's probably more like my good friend Katya's style with all of the gold on show, and of course you could stop there. The same with the mouldings. You could have just gone in with the trims, the corbels, and call it done. So there are many different stages throughout this process where you might feel that the project is complete. So you could distress, wax, and call the whole project finished. But I'm going to keep on going with these products, layering and applying sort of crackle, and I'm going to be doing a colour wash, I think, over the whole piece. I'm still unsure on the colour. I've gone from white to pink, white to pink. I'm now back in my head on pink, or both the colours. I'm thinking I might do the internal panels an off-white and all of the exterior, a mix of Scandinavian pink, maybe a touch of olive in there, just to tone down the candiness of Scandinavian pink, maybe a colour wash over the top of all of that with French linen again, scraping and chipping. This tutorial is going to be a very, very long tutorial. I've still got to focus on what I do with the top. That's going to be a marble finish, but I want to make sure that all of the paint and the lower half is complete before I start doing the marbling on top. So you're going to be with me for a very long time yet. So I'm going to move on to applying some crackle gel. I'm not going to do the whole piece, but I'm going to do key areas. I may even go over some of the gold. The gold wax is still a little bit tacky. I would say if you can, leave this for a day to completely cure, but I'm impatient. I'm going to keep on going, and if it all mixes and merges together, then be it. It's going to be quite an aged piece anyway. So crackle gel, let's move forward. The crackle gel is all dried now and I'm good to go with my layer of paint. So I've decided to go with a white internal panel, and then I'll think about whether we go pink on the external of each panel or not. I have mixed up a colour. I've used old white and a touch of old ochre to slightly make it a little bit more creamy in tone. How I'm going to tackle this is I've got a small angled brush, so I'm going to go into the edges of the detail, because if I'm going to have a connection between one colour and another, I don't want to be painting over too much of this detail. I'll address all of that a little later on in the project, but I'm going to go up to the edge just kind of loosely. I'm not going to worry too much if I go over the edges and into some of the details with this brush, but I am going to paint over the whole of the wreath in the centre and see how this all turns out. I have no idea whether the crackle gel will work because there is a lot of texture on here and the paint will probably cling to the texture, and Annie Sloan chalk paint is quite heavy. It's kind of a fuller bodied paint, so we may get crackles, we may not. We're just gonna find out. One thing that I would say is whatever paint you're working with, try to lay the paint on rather than agitate it up and down too much, because that kind of breaks the cracks. It should crack almost instantaneously, so don't do that. Fingers crossed we get something, but even if not, it's gonna make this surface kind of unstable for the later part of distressing anyhow. So let's go for it. So you may have noticed that I masked off the panels with the white colour underneath. The reason for this is I'm going to get a little bit splash happy with my Scandinavian pink olive mix on the edges. I'm not worrying too much about the trim. I've already gone over that with the white. Again, we'll address that a little later on as we're finishing this piece. So really, I'm just going to go in and cover everything with the Scandinavian pink olive mix. The drawers I've taken out so that I can do them separately with a small brush because there's all of these little grooves to get into. So again, wish me luck for success with the overall colour on this piece. Well, the cracks turned out absolutely beautiful, and now I'm going to move on to a colour wash. Now, I have no idea how stable this paint will be. It's had a good couple of hours drying time, so I'm hoping that all of the crackle gel underneath is dried, and that when we hit this with lots of water, not all of the paint is going to fall off. We are going to get what we're going to get. It's an experiment. I have no idea, so you're joining me on this journey. Whether it works or it doesn't, you'll just see me have to fix any mistakes that happen. So one thing that stands out to me at this moment in time, and this is why I want to use a colour wash, the white panels look rather white against the quite dark Scandinavian pink colour. So I want to kind of consolidate the two and kind of make them blend a little bit better. So I've mixed up a colour wash. I've used 2 parts Château grey, 1 part Paris grey, and then I've added about 70% water to get this sort of greeny grey liquid, which is going to be the colour wash. I'm going to go over the whole piece with the colour wash with 1 brush, quickly over everywhere. And then I've also pulled out, I've got a little plate here with a touch of flair, and that is French linen. to add into the detail. So I've got them as solid colour, but it will be rather wet. So I'm going to push it into some of the details around the mouldings. And the other thing that I've got, weirdly, I've got a nail brush, just in case some of the paint's not coming away. I can kind of softly brush over it and hopefully reveal some of the underneath colours. And I've got this. This is actually wadding from upholstery, and it's kind of a little bit wiry but very soft. And I just thought that might be a gentle abrasion just to remove some of the paint. In theory, I may be grabbing for lots of other things, or even trying to dry it quickly because the paint's falling off. So we are going to get what we're going to get. We may lose the crackle, but nevertheless, it will probably end up very authentic looking. I'm hoping. Fingers crossed. Wish me luck. So the piece of furniture has now dried from the colour wash. What can I say about using a colour wash over Crackle Gel? It does make the paint underneath a little bit more unstable, but in a really, really lovely way. So as you can see here, where the deeper cracks were, I think the wetness of the paint went underneath the Crackle Gel and just lifted it. So if you're going to attempt this, then you're going to need to use a really soft cloth and be gentle as you're taking that colour wash away, just to reveal the undercolours. At this stage, I have got a few more things to do. So I want to chip away at some of the edges. So I'm going to use a blade. This is like a razor blade in a scraper, just to pick away around some of the sharp edges and some of the salt wash to reveal the darker colour underneath, and even the wood, which is dark brown, underneath all of these layers of paint. And where will I be going next? Probably I will go in with clear wax and a touch of dark wax into some of the details, maybe a little bit more gilding wax here and there, and call it absolutely done on the lower half. You've got to stick with me because I'm going to do a quick marble technique on the top to finish this off. I think it will really balance to bring the lightness back to the top. And of course the handles, I'm not going to show you what I'm going to do to the handles. I'm going to paint them. I did that in a previous tutorial with the pigments and just make them look a little bit aged. And I've got a couple of key escutcheons, which is another Woodubend product. I'm going to spray them up the same colour, and hopefully the project will be close to an end. I'm now day 3 or 4 on this project. I'm literally losing the days as I count. So it's been a long project, but as you can see, it's looking really, really good. I'm really happy with the overall look at this stage. So what's left to do on this project? One of the things that I'm going to do at this stage is, because I'm happy with everything, all of the chipping and the distressing. Oh, I must add, late last night, I did go over the piece with a little bit of fly speck in the French linen. Here and there, I've just flicked it. So that's something that you probably will not see happen because I didn't film it. So that's one thing that's happened over the piece as well. So clear wax, I am going to add a touch of dark wax to the lighter details, into some of the mouldings. I'm not going to go over the pink sections, or at least I don't think I am, with the dark wax, only because the colour wash that we created with the Paris grey and Château grey, it has sat into all of the details, which almost looks like a dusty line into the crevice. So I don't want to cover that over with a brownie tone with the dark wax, but I'm happy for these panels to go a little bit browner in tone. The other things that have got to happen on this piece is I've got some handles to go on and a key escutcheon for both sides of the door. I'm going to add symmetry. I've got 2 more Woodubend mouldings. As if there wasn't enough on this piece, there's 2 more to go on. The key escutcheons are going to go on either side. I've painted them already to look like the handles. I may age and distress them as well. I probably won't share that in the video. They'll just magically appear at the end of the video. The other thing that's left to do is the marble top. So I'm not probably going to go through this as a step-by-step process, because this has been a long video. So I will link in a few marble tutorials that I've done in the past for tutorials in the description box. If anybody wants to learn the basics of how to do a chalk paint marble effect, I'll link them in down below. But you will see that happening, and it will be a nice process to watch in fast play on the top. I'm going to do it slightly different. I'm going to add some warmer tones to this marble, sort of beiges and warms. And I do think that having a lighter marble here will really tie these 2 colours together, in theory. So that's what I'm hoping. So onward and upward, you're going to watch me wax this piece in fast play, and we'll slowly see this piece of furniture come to its end, and I'll be happy to photograph it. I know it will come up absolutely beautiful.